Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 7, Dalit Movements. Let us have introduction about the unit. In recent years, there has been a growth of academic interest in Dalit mobilization and movements in India. There is mainly due to the fact that there has been greater mobilization and political participation of Dalit in the electoral process in the country as a whole. It is primarily the Bahujan Samaj Party BSP which in fact is responsible for the mobilization of the Dalits and the democratic upsurge revolving around the Dalits in the country. This unit focuses on the Dalit mobilization, assertion, and movement in the contemporary India. It deals with the meaning of Dalits, their mobilization in the pre and post independence period. It also discusses the ideology of BJP and its mobilization of Dalits. Let us try to understand who are Dalits. In the beginning, let us turn to the question who are Dalits? What is their condition in the society? The term Dalit is a Marathi word and literally means ground or broken to pieces. And it was first popularized by the Dalit Panthers in Maharashtra, by which they meant the scheduled caste population. Later on, there had been attempts to broaden this definition to any oppressed groups. Dalits generally refer to the scheduled caste alone, the caste that in the Hindu Varna system were outside the Varna system and were known as the Avarnas or Ati Shudra. They were considered as the impure and untouchables and were placed in the caste hierarchy which perpetuated inequality. There are even some people who include the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, the other backward classes, and even other converted minorities into this category. For our present purpose, we shall however refers to the SCs alone and not the other categories. The Dalits constitutes around 15% of the Indian population and belong to the lower rungs of the Indian society, economically and socially. According to the 1991 census, their number was 138 million persons. That is around 15.8% of Indian population. According to the 2001 census, they constitute more than 1,666 lakhs and around 16.2% of the entire population. They are spread throughout the country, though they are concentrated more in some states like Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Bihar, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan, Orissa, and Maharashtra. Their population is spread throughout the parliamentary and assembly constituencies, but in the country as a whole, it constitutes around one third of the electorate. The Dalits not only belong to the lower caste category but also belong to the lower class category of the Indian society. They are mainly poor peasants, sharecroppers, and agricultural laborers in the rural economy. In the urban economy, they basically form the bulk of the laboring population. Studies show that the condition of Dalits in the country as a whole has been changed significantly over the years. Even though the state in India had pursued pro poor policies aimed at ameliorating the condition of poor, among whom the Dalits constitute a large chunk, Mendelssohn and Vigency argue that the post independence regime has failed to bring about a systematic redistribution of resources in favor of those at the bottom of the society, and it has also failed to pursue a consistent, albeit non radical, strategy of supplying basic needs, health, education, and simple welfare to the poor. As a result of the policy of protective discrimination, an elite, mainly middle class, has emerged among Dalits, and it is these elite who have been the main beneficiaries of the state policy. As D.L. Sheth has noted, that the middle class that comprised essentially of the upper caste now includes a small section of the lower caste or Dalits. As a result of these changes, the entire Dalit population may now be divided roughly into two sections. A section of Dalits who have remained as they were earlier, and a small and narrow section who are relatively better off than the majority of the Dalit population. This, however, may be considered as a positive change, since it is this section among the Dalits who have primarily responsible for their mobilization and assertion in contemporary India. Another change may also be noted, and this is blatant form of caste discrimination which was practiced for centuries is not practiced in India today. Now we are going to discuss political mobilization of Dalits. First, pre-independence period. At the All India level, Ambedkar initiated the articulation of Dalit interest for the first time in the 1920s. Prior to Ambedkar, there had been attempts to bring about reforms in their condition in some of the Indian states. For example, Phule in Maharashtra, but it was an attempt towards reform rather than towards the mobilization of Dalit for political objectives. Ambedkar is known to have developed differences with Congress on several important questions relating to Dalit issues and more or less remained the only spokesperson and the preeminent advocate of the Dalits from 1919 for more than 3.5 decades in the pre-independence period. Though the Congress talked about the necessity of removing untouchability, yet it did not articulate any concrete demand or program to protect the interest of the depressed classes till 1917. In contrast, mobilization by Phule and Ambedkar in 1930s was firmly based on the belief that unless the caste system is destroyed, the social evil of untouchability cannot end, and that it is possible only if Dalits acquire power. Hence, in 1942, he formed the All India Dual Caste Federation, AISCF. Earlier, he formed several organizations, the most important being the Indian Labour Party, ILP. The ILP was an organization of a different kind in the sense that it aims and attempted to mobilize a broader section of Indian society and not exclusively the Dalits. He sought to use this organization to appeal to wider audience, including the industrial workers and the agricultural laborers. Duncan argues that he formed the ILP probably because he was convinced that a wider support base than the scheduled caste was essential, and hence he embarked on a more class like strategy. Now, the second one is post independence period. The formation of the AISCF was a very significant development in the history of Dalit mobilization in the country, though it was not much successful and suffered defeat in the election of 1946 and again in 1951. These reversals convinced Ambedkar that a separate political party was required, which will have a wider electoral strategy. After his death in 1956, the AISCF was dissolved and the Republican Party of India (RPI) was formed in 1957. The party, the first of its kind, accepted the fundamental provision of the Constitution and vowed to pursue its objective through the medium of parliamentary democracy. It functioned for almost 2 decades and was successful in establishing its base in the state of Maharashtra and to a limited extent in the state of Uttar Pradesh, though it is in later the RPI succeeded more in electoral terms than in Maharashtra. The RPI was also able to launch some major agitations, for example, the agitations for land distribution in 1959 and 1964-65. These agitations, however, were more of an aberration rather than a general feature of RPI politics. They were, in fact, isolated episodes and not harbingers of sustained mass movements. The sporadic nature of RPI politics was probably the main reason why the RPI could not keep its base intact and always had to confront the problem of losing its support base as soon as they, their agitation ended. By the mid 1960s, it had established itself in the state of Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh. These were the states in which it had a strong presence. Very soon, however, the RPI weakened largely because of internal differences on the issue of aligning with the Congress. A section of leadership within the party was pragmatic and was interested in joining hands with the Congress, whereas others were of the view that an alliance with the Congress would lead to a dilution of greater objective of party of promoting solidarity of the SC population in the country. On this issue, some of the leaders broke away from the party and joined the Congress. It broke into several factions, and today the various factions only play a marginal role in the politics of Maharashtra. The failure of the RPI to keep up to the lofty ideals of Ambedkar and to fulfill the aspirations of the Dalit youth led to the formation of the Dalit Panthers in Bombay in 1972. The Dalit Panthers drew its inspiration from the writings of Ambedkar and Marx. Its leader criticized the RPI leaders with having failed to keep up the ideals of Ambedkar and for its persistent splits and electoral failure. They sought to protect themselves as an alternative to the RPI and very soon were successful in attracting the Dalit youths and the students. Though initially it tasted success in the state of Maharashtra, yet very soon the movement fell prey to the same problems that had confronted the RPI. Due to the internal conflict among the leaders on several issues, the movement collapsed in a few years after its inception. Why is it so that Dalit political parties, including the association formed by Ambedkar, could not succeed or could succeed only partially in their political objectives? There are numerous reasons behind these. Duncan has noted three problems with these associations. Firstly, the parties or association to him always relied on the support of particular caste groups rather than on the Dalits as a whole. The organizations mainly relied on the Mahars in Maharashtra and Chamars or Jatavs in northern India, particularly in Uttar Pradesh. It is these castes that form the backbone of the associations. As a result, the other Dalit caste felt neglected and suspected these parties as a party of the caste group and not theirs. Secondly, according to the Deccan, one of the issues for the organization was the issue of whether to support other political parties as a part of their strategy during the elections or not. Ambedkar had left no clear directives in this regard. In the absence of a clear guidance from Ambedkar, the party leaders were caught up in ideological and strategic struggles. Some were in favor of the supporting the Congress and other parties whenever the need arose. Whereas others felt that supporting the Congress will lead to dilution of the aim and objectives of the party. On this question alone, many of the parties, including the RPI, split, and this weakened the movement in the country as a whole. Third, these parties did not develop any modern organizational structure which could be geared up or could be used for purpose of diffusing inner party struggles and help achieve cohesion. All these hastened the decline of the Ambedkarite parties, including those formed by Ambedkar. Another cause of decline may be added. The Ambedkarite parties were unable to cut into the vote bank or support base of the Congress party, which was really an overwhelming phenomena. Since Congress was a political party of all sections of the Indian population, the lower caste population did feel comfortable with the programs and policies of the RPI. The welfare policies of the Congress appealed to the Dalits in the country in general and in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra in particular. The expansion of Dalit parties in recent years has taken place only after the Congress had declined considerably and has created a vacuum for other political forces in the country. Hence, it is not surprising that the BSP has grown in a state, Uttar Pradesh, where the decline of the Congress has been more rapid and complete than in any other state in India. Now we wrap up this lecture and thank you so much for your attention.